Before anyone ever disrespected you, before they dismissed you, looked over you, misjudged you, there was something already true about you that no one could take away. You were created with intention, not as an afterthought, not as a backup plan. You are not a filler in the background of someone else's success story. You are an original design, fashioned by a God who never creates anything without purpose. That's why identity is not something you earn, it's something you discover. See, the tragedy of many lives is not that they are disrespected by others, but that they have not discovered the royalty within themselves. Because once you know who you are, you walk different, you talk different, you stop lowering your head to people who don't even understand what's inside of you. You can't be offended by someone who doesn't recognize gold just because they've only ever handled copper. That's why disrespect often has very little to do with you and everything to do with how small their lens is. When someone disrespects you, it is not a reflection of your value. It is a reflection of their vision. And too many of us have allowed broken people to become the mirror we measure ourselves in. Let me tell you this. You are not your job title. You are not your paycheck. You are not the degree you have or don't have. You are not what they said about you when they were angry or intimidated. You are what God spoke about you in eternity before time ever began. That means you don't have to prove yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Let them talk. Let them question. Let them underestimate you. Their voice is temporary, but God's word is eternal. I remember hearing this as a young man. If you don't know the purpose of a thing, you will abuse it. And I realized if I didn't know the purpose of my own life, I would allow others to abuse it by defining it for me. People can only disrespect what they think they own. So the moment you understand you don't belong to them, that you belong to God, their words lose their power. You've got to decide today, I know who I am. I'm not moved by applause. I'm not broken by rejection. I'm not swayed by status or titles. I am anchored in identity. When Jesus stood before Pilate being mocked, accused and disrespected, he said nothing. Why? Because he didn't need to prove he was the king. Kings don't debate peasants about crowns they already wear. He understood that power doesn't come from noise, it comes from knowledge, knowing who you are. So when they disrespect you, don't lose sleep, don't start doubting your worth. Smile, not out of pride, but out of understanding. Because you know something they don't. You're still rising, and God's not finished showing them who you are. There is a kind of strength the world does not understand, a strength that doesn't shout, doesn't argue, doesn't retaliate. It's the strength of stillness, the power of silent elevation. See, anybody can clap back. Anyone can post a response, throw a jab, or return the disrespect. That's easy. But it takes divine maturity to stay focused when you're being misjudged, to keep walking when they're throwing stones, to grow in silence while they're watching for your fall. We live in a culture that teaches us to defend ourselves at every turn, to fight back, to get loud, to make sure nobody gets away with mistreating us. But when your confidence is in God, not people, you don't waste your energy fighting battles that He's already settled. You don't need to prove anything to people who are not assigned to your destiny. Let me tell you what real revenge is. Real revenge is not revenge at all. It's elevation. It's when God raises you so high that the people who try to keep you low can't even reach to pull you back. It's when the very ones who doubted your value are forced to witness your promotion with silent regret. You see, fruit doesn't need to advertise. A tree doesn't need to announce its growth. It just stands tall, and eventually people come looking for the shade. People come looking for the fruit. The same ones who ignored your seed will show up when they see your harvest. So what do? You keep watering, you keep sowing, you keep growing in the dark where they're not watching, because God does his best work in hidden places. Elevation is not always public at first. Joseph was elevated in a prison cell before he ever stepped foot in Pharaoh's palace. David was anointed king while still tending sheep. Jesus was confirmed by heaven before he ever preached to a crowd. Your value is not proven when people see you. It's established when God sees you in secret. That's why you don't have to announce your glow up. Just glow. Don't rush to respond when they talk about you. Just keep rising. Because every time you grow without clapping back, every time you evolve in silence, every time you choose peace over proving a point, you are tapping into a realm of strength they can't compete with. And when God lifts you, nobody can take credit for it. It wasn't their applause that got you there, so it won't be their absence that brings you down. It's not about showing them who you are. It's about becoming who he called you to be, regardless of who's watching. So yes, let them talk. Let them think you're weak. Let them assume you've been defeated. They don't know that while they're wasting time watching, you've been working. While they're plotting your downfall, God is writing your rise. And when the time comes, they won't hear a sound. They'll just see you standing in a place they never believed you could reach. Not because you argued, not because you shouted, but because you let your silence speak and your growth did all the talking. I'll never forget the moment I realized that rejection was actually divine redirection. It was one of the most humbling seasons of my life. I had poured myself into something, I gave it everything. Time, energy, prayer, preparation. I was committed. I was consistent. I was convinced I had done all the right things. I was even helping others get into the very space I believed God had called me to. And when the opportunity came, I wasn't just expecting, I was ready. I showed up early, I stood with confidence. But when the names were called, when the decisions were made, when the doors were open, mine stayed shut. No explanation, no thank you, just silence. I smiled. On the outside, I acted like it didn't matter. But inside, it hurt deeply. Because I wasn't just rejected, I was overlooked by people I had served. I had supported them when they were rising. I had encouraged them when they were unsure. I had celebrated them even when I was still waiting. And yet they couldn't see the value I carried. Not because it wasn't there, but because their vision wasn't trained to recognize it. I wrestled with that pain for weeks, maybe months. I questioned my ability. I questioned my assignment. I even started to question if maybe I had misheard God. But the longer I sat with the disappointment, the clearer I began to see what was really happening. God wasn't punishing me. He was protecting me. He wasn't denying me. He was developing me. See, if they had given me that position, that opportunity, that seat, I would have stayed in a place too small for the vision he had planted inside of me. I would have settled for validation when God wanted me to experience manifestation. So I kept working quietly, faithfully, while no one was watching. I kept reading. I kept writing. I kept building what God had placed in my heart. No applause, no spotlight, just obedience, just purpose. And then, in a way that only God could orchestrate, the same people who once saw me as not ready began to call me necessary. Not because I begged, not because I campaigned, but because my growth was undeniable. The fruit became so visible they couldn't ignore it. Some of them apologized, some just acted like nothing happened, and some didn't say a word, but their silence said everything. And I realized in that moment the goal was never revenge. The goal was never to make them pay. It was to become so aligned with who God made me to be that even those who rejected me would have no choice but to recognize the hand of God on my life. You see, I needed that rejection. I needed that disappointment. Because it broke me in a way that forced me to rebuild, not in bitterness, but in boldness. Not to get back at anyone, but to get back in alignment with my assignment. God has a way of using the very thing that tried to bury you to become the soil for your breakthrough. So don't despise rejection. Don't curse the people who couldn't see you. Just keep growing, keep rising, keep building, because when God gets ready to reveal you, no person's opinion can stop the unveiling. And when they look back, when they realize who you've become, they won't just remember your name. They'll remember how wrong they were to ever doubt your calling. There are moments in life when disrespect doesn't just sting, it confuses you. You ask yourself, why would they treat me like that? Why would they talk down to me when I've only tried to help? Why would they overlook me when I've given nothing but excellence? And if you're not careful, those questions will turn into doubt, not just of others, but of yourself and even of God. But I've learned something over the years. What looks like disrespect from man is often redirection from heaven. See, sometimes God allows dishonor in a place because he knows if they celebrated you there, you'd stay. If they had treated you right, you would have gotten comfortable. If they had opened the door, you would have thought that was the destination, but it wasn't. It was a stop, a lesson, a training ground, a temporary assignment, not your eternal calling. God is too wise to let you settle in spaces beneath your potential. So sometimes he permits the discomfort to provoke movement. He allows the rejection to reroute your attention. That disrespect wasn't about your worth, it was about your direction. Because if the wrong people affirm you, they might also try to own you. And God is not in the business of letting his children be managed by those who don't understand their mandate. I think of Joseph, loved by God, favored by his father, gifted with dreams. But the people closest to him didn't honor it. His own brothers disrespected him, plotted against him, sold him into slavery. That's not just rejection, that's betrayal. But that betrayal became the bridge to Egypt. Egypt became the platform for his preparation. And preparation became the path to the palace. So the very route that looked like destruction was actually divine transportation. God will let them laugh. He'll let them talk behind your back. He'll let them exclude you from the table because he's preparing a better one. You didn't lose favor, you were being relocated. You didn't fall from grace, you were being positioned for a greater stage. Sometimes the place where you are dishonored is the very evidence that you've outgrown it. You've become too big for their box, too deep for their shallow understanding, too bright for the dim space they try to confine you in. So rather than fighting to stay, God lets their dishonor free you. You see, promotion in the kingdom rarely looks like a stage at first. Sometimes it looks like a wilderness. Sometimes it looks like being forgotten. But it's in those quiet, humbling places that God does his deepest work. It's where he strips away the need for applause. It's where he reminds you that your identity is not tied to who accepts you, but to who sent you. So if they disrespected you, good. If they didn't call you back, thank God. If they try to diminish your worth, let them. Because now you are free. Free to walk into rooms where your voice won't be silenced. Free to build in places where your gift will be nurtured. Free to pursue purpose without needing their permission. What you thought was rejection was really protection. What you saw as insult was actually insight. Evidence that God is rerouting you to a space where your purpose can breathe. So let them think they've won. Let them feel like they got the last word. What they don't know is they just pushed you one step closer to the very thing they never believed you could reach. There is a certain kind of life you can live that becomes the answer to every question they ever asked about you. A kind of life that silences every doubt, every insult, every moment of disrespect. Not because you responded, But because you rose so high, your elevation did the talking. You didn't just bounce back, you ascended. And when you live like that, you don't have to seek revenge. You don't have to prove anything. Your obedience becomes the loudest vindication. You see, there's a difference between people clapping for you and people regretting that they didn't. One is based on what you gave them. The other is based on what they missed. There is power in becoming so excellent, so impactful, so rooted in who God called you to be, that the very people who once disrespected you now carry a quiet, private conviction. Every time they see your name mentioned, every time they hear your voice, every time they remember the moment they dismissed you, you don't do it for revenge, you do it for purpose. But purpose has a way of humbling those who misjudged it. Think about Jesus. They said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? They didn't just question him, they questioned his origin, his background, his potential. But he didn't argue, he didn't explain, he didn't defend himself. He just kept walking in his assignment, healing, teaching, transforming lives, and in the end, the stone they rejected became the cornerstone. The very one they crucified became the Savior of the world. That's the power of living in alignment with destiny. It turns your doubters into silent witnesses of your greatness. You have to understand, when God's hand is on your life, there is no need to announce it. All you have to do is stay faithful, keep building, keep showing up, keep doing the work, because one day your consistency will confront their disbelief. But with undeniable fruit, live in such a way that your character can't be questioned, your results can't be denied, and your calling can't be dismissed. Let the excellence of your life preach a sermon louder than any defense you could give. The truth is, they didn't know who you were, but now they do. And it's not because you told them, it's because you became undeniable. You stayed planted when they tried to uproot you. You remained silent when they expected you to lash out. And in doing so, you reveal a level of strength that only comes from being anchored in divine purpose. And now every win you walk in is a reminder. Every door that opens, every life you touch, every stage you stand on is a quiet echo back to those moments of dismissal. You were wrong, and you don't have to say a thing. Because God's glory on your life speaks louder than any words you could offer. So live boldly, humbly, purposefully. Become the living proof that doubt was a mistake and that God was never wrong in choosing you. Because when you live like that, you don't just succeed, you awaken regret in those who dared to disrespect what heaven had already affirmed.